The White House is dealing with some major economic pressures, both here at home and abroad. First, on the domestic front, interest rates are climbing despite efforts by the Treasury Department to calm the bond market and control the spike in borrowing costs. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. government could now spend more than $4 billion on a program to boost bond prices by reducing their supply. It's a fix that's only worked temporarily as rates hit their highest level this week since 2007. And of course, America's national debt surpassed $40 trillion for the first time in history.
If the signal here is that you're not happy with the direction of yields, you know, they've gone back the other way. We've erased most of the Treasury rally that you got yesterday with that big surprise. So how much more are you willing to do?
Well, again, we have a big toolkit, so we'll see. And part of it is signaling here and to show that we believe that the yields don't reflect the underlying fundamentals. This Iran conflict, we will get on the other side of this.
Now, you heard the secretary mention the other big economic issue, and it's the most unpredictable of them because it's the war in Iran. Wall Street expects the continued rise in oil prices could lead to higher inflation. And all of this as President Trump wages what he calls economic warfare on Iran. Ultimately, the moves the department is making now may not even have any impact, as it's estimated that the U.S. government will need to issue nearly $550 billion in bonds this quarter alone. And so, of course, amid all of this economic uncertainty, the Trump administration says it's not their fault. Whose is it?
And remember, we did not get here in a day. That we were left with a mess. The Biden administration had the highest deficit to GDP in history when we weren't at war or weren't in a recession. For 2025, we brought it down by more than 1%.
Even though the debt is too high, even though we inherited this debt bomb from the Biden administration, we actually do have a plan to get the economy growing faster than the debt, and that's the most important thing. The issue that we've had under the Biden administration and what we're still kind of dealing with is that the debt was growing faster than American GDP. That's the problem. That's something that we're certainly fixing every single day in the Trump administration. But you know, even though the media doesn't cover this, I'm glad you're asking this question because Scott Bessent is very much on top of it. He knows it's a problem, and he's got the president's empowerment to do something about it.
Let's talk about it. Let's fact check it a little bit, because the deficit to GDP did go down last year, but only by 0.5%. Meanwhile, the debt to GDP ratio has actually worsened since Trump returned to the White House. And the Trump administration's spending cuts have been offset by the president's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, which is set to add more than $4 trillion to the debt by 2034, in large part because they just extended those tax cuts permanently. They were able to zero it out when the Senate was considering it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't cost nothing. And then, of course, that is on top of the nearly $4 trillion that has already added to the debt in 19 months of Trump's current term. When you combine that with his first term, President Trump is responsible for $11.6 trillion of the national debt. I want to bring in MS Now White House reporter Laura Barrón-López. Laura, I also want to be clear, we are not saying the only reason the national debt is this high is because of the Trump administration, but they have a role to play in this. And the idea that, a year and a half plus into the administration, everything that they don't like on the economy, they're still trying to say, oh, that was Biden. I mean, there's no way that voters are going to buy that. And so is that the message? Just try to make it Biden's fault, even though people are so clearly in the Trump era?
Yeah, that is clearly part of the message, because whether it's the president, whether it's the vice president, Treasury Secretary, so many others in the administration, that is what they are saying over and over again when they are confronted with the reality of the economy, when they are confronted with the high gas prices, high grocery prices, costs of living, and with the consequences of the Iran war. Their answer is, well, this started under Joe Biden. This is an issue we've been dealing with since the Biden presidency, even though the Iran war is a war of the president's own making. And the president is saying just this week that, again, he is going with this strategy of tremendous economic consequences for including not just Iran, but also any partners that help Iran or work with Iran and come to Iran's aid. But again, the strategy so far if you can call it a new one, doesn't seem to necessarily be working.
Yeah, this is one of the oldest plays in the playbook of anything I don't like. And I think Trump said this in the early months of his administration. This time, when the economy's good, it's mine. And when the economy's bad, it's Biden's. And again, it's going to wear thinner and thinner as the days go by. It's already basically like this.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Iran economic warfare, did Bessent detail anything more deeply or more detailed around what they're trying to do here?
No, other than the fact that, just this week, previously 2 weeks ago or so, the president was saying economic pain for Iran itself. Now they're saying for their partners just this week.
Okay.
So extending it beyond just Iran into anyone who does business with Iran. But again, when it gets down to the nitty gritty of timelines and how exactly this is supposed to get to a diplomatic solution or some other kind of solution, the administration doesn't have answers.
Doesn't have answers. And then I think, of course, all of this leads to the midterms and the ways that Republicans are jittery about their chances. We're going to talk about how weird this Senate map has gotten because it's wild. And it all lends to the way that this administration is talking about elections. And so we want to spotlight the fact that senior officials within the Department of Homeland Security have told Nevada election administrators that the Trump administration has not verified its claim that nearly 16,000 non-citizens are illegally registered to vote in the state. What's more, those same DHS officials said they had identified only 185 potential non-citizens on the state's voter rolls. That's according to emails and a video recording obtained by MS Now. As of yesterday, DHS had yet to review more than 14,000 additional names, according to the material, which Nevada's Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar released in response to a public records request. Aguilar told MS Now, quote, DHS representatives informed our office that the numbers that were provided to the public are preliminary, and that there is not high enough confidence to be able to share the full data set with Nevada officials. A DHS spokesperson disputed the reporting, providing us with a statement reading in part, quote, this is false. The 185 individuals that had gone through manual review. The list shared with Nevada also included 62,000 roughly other individuals with the highest number of matching attributes. President Trump and the White House have claimed, of course, without proof, that non-citizen voting could sway elections and have directed DHS to search for non-citizen voter fraud. It's part of what they're doing here. Multiple state elections administrators told MS Now they fear the administration could use non-citizen voter claims to interfere with November's midterm elections, potentially attempting to seize ballots or tabulation machines. Laura, this is your new reporting. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to folks about why something that seems esoteric or in the weeds or in the numbers is actually potentially a very important preview of what could come?
Well, this hunt for non-citizen voters on registration rolls or non-citizens who may have illegally voted is one of the biggest pieces of the president's anti-immigration, but also election interference campaign. So they have tasked DHS and agents there and people at the U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services, mind you, which this is not typically what they would do, to look for all of these potential non-citizens on voter rolls. Now, again, what's stunning is this isn't the only state they're focused on. They're also focused on California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania when it comes to looking for non-citizens on voter rolls. But Mark Wayne Mullen came out a day after President Trump gave that speech, again saying that 2020 was rigged, that China potentially interfered in the election, even though there was no evidence to suggest that. Mark Wayne Mullen came out a day later and said, DHS has found that more than 250,000 non-citizens, potential non-citizens, are on voter rolls across these 4 states. Nevada was one of them. But then we come to find out that, especially in the case of Nevada, we haven't been able to get information about the other states. But in the case of Nevada, these documents show that only 185 people have been confirmed non-citizens by DHS, that they announced that there were nearly 16,000, but it's really only 185. And that is a huge discrepancy. And despite DHS's statement, in the emails that we reviewed, one of the government employees flat out says that we have not reviewed 14,000 of the other names. And again, these are potential non-citizens on voter rolls. That does not mean that these people voted. But this is a part of the administration's larger campaign to essentially set a pretext and say, look, there's this widespread non-citizens on voter rolls. This could sway the election.